Hello, I'm Cynthia Myers-Morrison, and I'm a board member for Food Addiction Institute and delighted to be here today interviewing Bethany Mazereeuw. And she is with Simplicated, and she's going to talk to you about a variety of different things. But could we first start with your personal story of recovery?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Cynthia. Yeah, so I have my own personal story with sugar addiction and just a very unhealthy relationship with food and my body. And that has been most of my life, even starting from a young child. So this was sort of disguised in dieting, right? So dieting very socially acceptable. But I had the tendency to take that to extremes. So trying every new diet, no matter how strange my family and friends thought it to be. And probably, if I think about it, two of the strangest ones that I tried, the juice fasting. So making all of my own vegetable juices with an expensive juicer and having only those juices. I think I lasted about 6 days. My intention was 6 weeks, and I lasted about 6 days. And I remember saying to someone at work, sipping on my, beet juice, and saying, "I'm just waiting for the mental clarity to kick in." And he laughed at me. So and then one of the other strange ones I can remember was the slow carb diet. So that's eating lots of protein and eggs and beans for 6 days a week, and then having a cheat day on the seventh day, which of course doesn't work very well for someone with a very complicated relationship with food and food addiction. So those fantasies of cheat day soon overshadowed everything else I did during the week, right? So I found out a lot about myself through trying these, but I always thought I was the problem because every new diet out there, I would try it and then it wouldn't work eventually, and I would blame myself, right? So that wasn't great. So finding out about food addiction was it was like finding a key that unlocked something for me, right? And it's not the only key I needed, but it was a very big one, a very helpful one. And so that was something very eye-opening for me, and realizing that, hey, I have this problem with food, and perhaps dieting even exacerbated that problem for me, but I am actually not the one to blame, right? So I just needed to try a different mindset, a different way of doing this. So food addiction, finding out about that really did help me with that. Yeah. So that's a little bit about my personal story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I would also then like to ask you what are some, well, how you became interested in decluttering and helping people to declutter. And for me, I was interested a long time ago. I talked to this fellow who was a scientist who said that voles, those little furry creatures, that when they changed into hoarders, it was because they had a B6 deficiency. And I have not been able to find it online. So I'm going to contact him, reach out from long ago
Yeah.
and find him. But he was a scientist who reported that to me. And it's always been one of those curiosities to me. But also that when on food recovery lines, that one of the very first things that people have said when they are in recovery is, oh, I have to start decluttering. So
Mm.
there's some kind of a connection there in my mind and heart, and certainly in my personal experience. So I'm thrilled that you're here to talk about decluttering and how you got to be interested in this interesting field.
It is interesting, right? And we live in such a society of excess that this is decluttering has become a bit of a skill and a necessity for living more simply. So, yeah. So how I got started. So in with my husband and I, and we have two kids as well. So we would sometimes get a call for someone who's maybe through a church or a group that we knew of, and people would be maybe coming to Canada, starting over their new life here, and they needed things, right? Maybe they needed sheets or towels or dishes or kitchen utensils. And so we would go through our home, our cupboards, and find things that we thought, oh, we could probably live without this. And these people need it. So let's give it away. Right. And that felt really good to us because they had nothing and we always seemed to have extra. Right. So it felt good to give it away. And what surprised us about that was feeling even better about the space that was left behind. Right. So we would look in our linen cupboard or in our closet or somewhere and think, oh, there's extra space here. And now I know exactly what we have. And it really brought about this feeling of contentment and freedom. So we started to do more of this decluttering just on our own without being prompted. So I remember the category we started with was clothing, and I could not believe how much we donated. And thinking about people who could be able to use it certainly propelled us on, but also thinking about the amount of space that would be left. And so clothing can be something, especially if we have a history of dieting or changing sizes, clothing can be a tricky one for us, right? Because we tend to have closets that have multiple sizes in them. And especially, I would say for women, if we start our day in the closet and there are a bunch of clothes there that they either don't fit us or they're too itchy or they're not the right color or something tugs on them or they need to be mended. It's like starting your day behind the eight ball and with this critical voice that says you're not measuring up in some way. Right. So I do wardrobe editing as well to help other people find this feeling of freedom. So in 2019, my husband and I started the company called Simplicated, and that was to help people find that sense of freedom and have really meaningful donations of their things. So now we've also added on a service where we can focus on seniors and when they're moving. So relocating oftentimes from a large house into a smaller place. And this can be a really emotional time for them. And the stress of relocating is actually felt very acutely as we get older. And so we will help people to, we don't call it downsizing, we call it right sizing because you want the right amount of things to go into the new home. And so we, as you can imagine, now we spend a lot of time and energy walking beside people and encouraging them to let go of things. Right. And this decluttering process is extremely emotional for them, but we know that it holds a lot of power for them as well. When they can let go of things, then they can end up in their new place with less things and they can focus on what they want to do there and who they want to be in that next stage of life. So that's a little bit about how we got involved in decluttering itself. And yeah, and so I think you were now alluding to what is the overlap there when we are in recovery from something like food addiction. So do you want me to just go right into that part? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
excellent.
There is an intersection here of a few things, right? So if you think about decluttering, supporting our mental health. So when we don't have, so much stuff, our mental health improves. And then mental health is such an important part of our recovery journey as well. So if we think about the intersection of those things, maybe it would be helpful to first think about what is the effect of clutter on our brains. Okay, so our brains do like order, right? So when things are not in order, it's starting to drain our brain's capacity to do other things. So maybe we have a hard time focusing, and then when we have a hard time focusing, it's difficult to process information. And so this can contribute to brain fog, which, as we know, in recovery from sugar addiction, that's compounded when we have sugar. So you've got brain fog maybe from what you're eating, and now you've also got brain fog happening from all the things in your home. And the result is that, trying to understand things now is much harder when you are in a cluttered space or in kind of a mess, right? So also having a lot of clutter around can create just distraction in general. So visually, you've got sort of this cognitive overload happening, and that's reducing your working memory, might even cause age-related memory loss. So if you think about, sitting down to do a task in a cluttered room, you can visually see all the things that are around you. And now you're starting to think about, oh yeah, I need to do this. And now you're moving over to that task and that thought, and you've left behind what you sat down to do, right? So it's very distracting. Maybe we're even going to cause ourselves some stress because we're starting to have to look for things in a cluttered environment, right? So now we're spending time looking for lost things, that we could be spending that time on other things, but now, we're looking for, important paperwork or our wallet or our keys or our mittens or whatever we need. But because things are getting lost in the visual clutter and that space, we're having to spend a lot of time looking for them. And sometimes we even buy new things because we can't find the old things, right? Yeah, exactly. So now we have two of something and maybe we've lost both of them. So, and also then just when we see clutter, it's increasing this sense of overwhelm that we have, right? So we're looking at the clutter and thinking, I need to work on that. I need to get at that. And we always feel like we're behind this 8 ball, or we're maybe losing in life somehow because, this is contributing to that sense of overwhelm. And so these are effects on our mental health, right? So it's hard to rest and relax when you're in a cluttered space because you've got these constant reminders of things that need to be done. We need to act, we need to clean, we need to organize. And all of that is increasing our cortisol, which is the stress hormone, right? Or a stress hormone. Maybe we're procrastinating more because we're getting distracted, right? It takes a bit longer now to find papers. So if we have to do a task that involves finding papers, we're putting it off longer because the task is more difficult if we can't find the papers, right? Or the information or the tools that we need to perform a task. So it may just be that the task seems more difficult and overwhelming because we don't know where to start in a cluttered environment. Sometimes our interpersonal relationships can suffer too when we have clutter. So if you've got, two people living in the same space and they are not on the same page with their tolerance of clutter, we can have some tension. This can produce some tension. Maybe someone wants to hang on to things longer than the other person. They don't understand, why are we keeping all these things? They're in my way. And so that can cause some conflict in our interpersonal relationships. It could also be that if you have a cluttered home and that it becomes more difficult than maybe to invite people in to your space because you have some shame or it's embarrassing to have this amount of clutter and you think, I need to clean up before I can have people over, then maybe we're going to put off having people over and we're going to lose out on making those connections with people. So these are just some of the effects on mental health. So now thinking about those overlapping circles and more of a direct connection with our recovery from sugar and food addiction, think about eating behavior and how that can be affected by clutter, right? So when we feel overwhelmed and out of control, now we've got this mindset where we're starting to succumb to impulses due to all the stress that we're feeling, right? And succumbing to impulses means what? Right? It means engaging in unhealthy eating behaviors, right? So research has shown that when people are in a chaotic environment, they actually eat more cookies, snacks, things like that, than they do when they're in an orderly environment. So we know that there's that connection, that direct connection. And so now I just thought, let's envision walking into your kitchen in the morning, right? So this is the place where many of us get our day started. So if you walk into the kitchen and you see last night's dishes, maybe you see some pantry ingredients all over the counter, all of a sudden you've got this shot of cortisol, your stress level goes up. Maybe you have a dose of regret or a sense of feeling not good enough. And you start to berate yourself for not being better organized, right? And now you're going to take all of that into your day that's awaiting you, right? So now let's envision the opposite. So if you walk into the kitchen and the kitchen that greets you is clean and tidy, the kitchen is kind of saying, hey, thanks for taking a few minutes last night to put things in order and do some dishes. And now your day is getting started on a positive note, and you're ready to face those challenges that are waiting for you, right? So you can kind of in this way envision your space as gently holding your recovering self, right? Giving you the chance to become your best self, right? So that's kind of our space. Also, in the same way that we once used food to distract ourselves from feeling pain, we can use these things as having a lot of things can also end up holding us back from progressing in our recovery, right? So it also holds us back from feeling things when we maybe go shopping for new things. So it prevents us from getting to that deeper layer of thoughts and feelings and uncovering the patterns that aren't serving us very well. So when we've got maybe some old furniture or some clothing that is either too big or too small, maybe the paperwork is starting to overflow, or you've got cabinets that are filled with items that really don't have much use for us. These are all things that are getting in the way of our well-being, right? So in short, like all these things and distractions are keeping us separated from our true selves. And so, when we make these efforts to declutter, we're caring for our mental health, we're making space for the person we're becoming, we're intentionally looking at what is holding us back from the life that we want to live. And we're starting to let go of the non-essential things, maybe in our homes, maybe in our calendars, maybe it's thought patterns that don't serve us very well. So we're decluttering our minds too. We know about decluttering your diet, right? So getting out those things that are no longer serving us. And we're recognizing, hey, these are actually things that are distracting us from how we truly want to live, right? So we can then see the process of decluttering and the result of decluttering is sort of this beautiful form of self-care, right? Because we not only want to give ourselves a clutter-free space, but we want to promote peace of mind, reduction of stress, and just opening up to this, like I call it breathing room, this room to be mindful of things. So yeah, so that's kind of how I see these things as overlapping: the decluttering, the mental health, the recovery.
And you have some background in that arena that you didn't mention earlier. So would you share that with our audience?
Right. So do you mean some background in helping people to do
Helping
this?
people, and
Right.
both in terms of helping people declutter and also the mental health aspect of it and social well-being.
Yeah. So I have a master's of social work. And so this is kind of my jam, is helping people see what is holding them back. So it doesn't really matter if I'm going to help someone to do some decluttering, or maybe, it's a senior citizen who's got a move planned and now they're going to try and re-envision their life in the new space. Or if it's someone coming to me because they need some help with their diet, maybe they have a history where they've discovered food addiction is playing a role for them, or some kind of disordered eating, or maybe just they've tried a bunch of diets and they don't understand why it's not working, right? So yes, and so this is what I love to do with people, is like, let's have a look at what is holding you back, and could we gain some ground? Could you find some freedom in making some of these changes and thinking about it as like a letting go, a releasing of these things that are holding you back, right? So and yeah, in terms of tips, like, so if somebody is wanting to declutter, I would say one of the best things I can say to you is start small, right? So if we imagine this a little bit like a gym experience where you want to go and you want to build muscles. Okay, so so I would never recommend to someone to walk into a gym and pick up the 100-pound weight,
No.
right? No, we go in and we pick up a 5 or 10 pound weight, and we lift that until we get better at that. And then we pick up a heavier weight and then a heavier weight, and we can progress then to the 100-pound weight. So when we're decluttering, I sort of see the sentimental items and photos and things like that. Those are the 100-pound weights, right? Those are the things we need to work up to. You need to gain some momentum. If you start with those ones, you're probably going to get discouraged and stuck right off the bat. right?
Books
And
might fall in that category too.
perhaps books,
For
right?
some of us.
Yes, myself included.
So
So,
where do you suggest people start?
so I would say start with an achievable goal. Okay. So usually we say start with a category of things. So if you start with a room, then things have a tendency to migrate around the house, right? So you look at the room and you say, oh, this doesn't belong in this room. I'm going to move it to that room. But you haven't actually made a decision about whether or not it gets to stay in your house. You've just moved it to another room. So there's this migration happening of things moving around your house. So that's why I say start with a category. And if you want to start with the 5 or 10 pound weight, then you to pick a very small category. So maybe you want to just look at your mugs. You just want to look at the mugs that maybe you're finding that the mugs are stacking on top of each other and maybe you don't need so many mugs. All right, so then pull out all the mugs and look at each one, and the ones you're putting back into the cupboard, they need to earn their space in the cupboard. Okay. So you want to put them back only if they are like a favorite or they're very useful to you. So you know these ones because these are the ones you use every day and you like them and you reach for them. Okay. The ones that have made their way to the back or the bottom, then those are probably the ones you can let go of and let someone else enjoy. Okay, so that's sort of an idea of a category. You may want to start with just one junk drawer. If you've only got, 15 minutes, set a timer, go at that junk drawer, pull everything out of the drawer, and again, make it earn its space when it goes back into the drawer. Okay, so you can think of this like you want really good and useful tenants in your house. You want to make them earn their keep, right? So, and when you do this, I mean, there's so many overlapping benefits here. So you're going to gain a bit of a sense of motivation. You're going to start to pick up steam on these things, a bit of sense of purpose, and then that can also serve as a positive distraction from cravings. If you're new into giving up the sugar, this is going to keep your mind and your hands occupied, right, and prevent boredom, and it's going to just be like a simple coping strategy at the beginning. A question that you could ask yourself as you're going through your things is, does this item enhance who I'm becoming? Does it enhance my recovery? Right. And if it doesn't, if it's something that is keeping you stuck in the past or, in your old way of doing things, give yourself the permission to give it away. Right. And this is why I like to give things away to donation outlets like thrift stores, where I know that it's going to be able to bless somebody else. Sometimes you have the benefit of, someone who's just coming to the area in which you live, they're starting over. Maybe it's from, a relationship breakup. Maybe they're just coming from another country, and you can give them things directly. And sometimes we don't have that opportunity. And so we use things like thrift shops and trusted charities as that intermediary for us. So if it enhances your recovery and who you're becoming, then you have permission to keep it. And if not, you have permission to let it go. And in doing this, you're also reinforcing and strengthening that person that you're becoming, right? We can also talk about decluttering the food, right?
That's a good one.
So oftentimes when we're helping people with this, we tell them to go through their cupboards, their fridges, and get rid of the foods that trip them up. So we can see those foods as clutter, things that get in the way of them being their best selves.
Mhm.
So we want to really clean out and leave behind the things that are good for them, the things that they know are safe foods or things that promote their physical well-being and their mental well-being, right? And they give them some peace and help reduce the chatter with the food, right? So those things that sort of talk to you all day long and say, I'm here, I'm really tempting, those are cluttering things, right? Those might be things that are on like a red light list or a yellow light list, and getting rid of them, getting them out of your space promotes peace and enhances that sense of self and who you're becoming, right? So decluttering the food is always a good idea. Another benefit I would say to this is when you tackle, like when you've worked yourself up a little bit, so now you're done the junk drawer or the mugs or whatever smaller category there is, maybe you're ready to tackle a larger space. So maybe an attic or a garage or a crawl space. These are the places in our homes where I like to say this is the land of deferred decisions. This is where all the deferred decisions go to live, right? So if we're going to start to tackle a larger space like that, it can also provide some physical exercise, right? And that we know physical exercise is excellent for our recovery. And this is a good way to do it, especially if we have maybe some hangups or some reservations about going to a gym, or embarking on something that would be sort of traditionally known as physical exercise. Decluttering can actually be a great way to get some of that physical exercise, right? Because you are bending and lifting and looking at things, and so you don't even need to go to a gym sometimes to be able to find that within your home.
There
And
was,
yeah,
give
go
me a
ahead.
share an example. My
Sure.
my husband, when we got married, had a downstairs that frequently flooded.
Mm-hmm.
And so things were wet and
Mm-hmm.
soggy and yucky. And
Mm-hmm.
he was ready to let go of all those things. But they
Okay.
needed to really have him look at it to make sure it wasn't some treasured something that he wanted to keep. I became the intermediary to the door. A helper came and carried things from that downstairs door around to a huge bin that we had ordered,
Yes.
received,
Yes.
to put enormous amounts of stuff that was not helpful at all and
Mm-hmm.
needed to be discarded immediately.
Yeah.
And but it took all three of us to get that stuff into the bin. The fourth
Mm-hmm.
was the bin holder that came and carried it away. And but it was really so, it had been a weight upon him, a
Mm-hmm.
cortisol making thing on him that he needed to do that, but he
Mm-hmm.
hadn't gotten it done.
Right.
So sometimes it's really that freedom that you talked about is so real
Mm-hmm.
when done. So
Yeah, it's this process of letting go really uh, it helps us to focus on what we're gaining instead of what we're giving up, right? And that sense of freedom is just it's so empowering, and we don't even sometimes know that that weight has been there until we let go of it, right? So there's so many parallels here with our food journeys, because this is the same thing that we're learning to do with the food, right? We're thinking about what are we gaining by not eating this food or by giving up these foods or taking them out of our diet. It's a real shift in mindset, I think, that can help promote that freedom. It helps us to really sort of create this space where we can live with intention and meaning and purpose. So we don't have these things like this mental weight of, oh yeah, all those boxes are in the basement, they're all damaged, I've got to go through those someday. And it's just like hanging around, this task that's hanging around. So I love that you asked for help as well. And the other thing I just wanted to point out that you did that I think is important is that you got rid of those things then right away. Once the decision was made, it was out, right? Because sometimes what can happen is we make the decision and then it sits by the front door waiting to go to someone or go somewhere. And sometimes those things just make their way back into the house and they get absorbed again into the house. And then we're really no further ahead. So I love that you had that the bin was there ready to receive these decisions, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Another example that I had personally was with friends that had decided they were going to change their eating,
Mm-hmm.
and they were going to clean out the kitchen and the refrigerator. And so they enlisted help in doing that, but they kept the things that they had taken out of their cupboards and out of the refrigerator in a holding zone, thinking, well, maybe some of those could come back.
Right.
And before a week had passed, those virtually empty cabinets
Mm-hmm.
had now regained a number of things that didn't serve them. Didn't see
Yeah.
them. So
Yeah.
getting them off to the food pantry or off to wherever they're going to go. If you can't
Yes.
throw them away, giving them away immediately is so important.
It really is, because we tend to have those then moments, like we make the decision and that feels like a moment of strength, right? We've done it, we know who we're becoming, we know these things aren't going to serve us. And then our mind tends to soften or change a little bit. And then we think, oh, but maybe we could have those things. I mean, sometimes when we're decluttering, I talk about this character that shows up from time to time. Maybe you know him, Cynthia. His name is Mr. Case, um, Justin Case.
I know, Justin.
Right. And Justin comes in and tries to convince us that maybe someday in the right circumstance, this thing is going to become useful to us again. I need to keep this just in case of such a circumstance, right? And he can convince us to hang on to all kinds of things. And so sort of seeing Justin for who he is and what his game is can help us to say, oh, actually, I'm not even sure that this situation is going to ever come to pass, right? So for now, and if it does, if the situation does come to pass, I will be able to find another one of these things, right? So in the same way with the food journey, if you get it out of your space now, then later on, if you decide, I think I could handle that thing again, you can always go and get a new one and bring it back into your space and try it. And if you decide that doesn't work, out it goes again,
Or
right?
go to
So
the Savers or one of those
yes,
places that has them, the trusted recipient
exactly.
previously, because then you can get it secondhand for a much lower cost. And that
Exactly.
the initials are JIC, Justin
Just in
Cates.
case.
And JIC is one of those entities that when my husband and I started being nomads, we had so many just in case things that needed to go in the car. And when you think of that many things going into one regular size car, there is not enough room.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And my husband likes to say too, like if we're traveling and if I tend to pack a little too much, he often will just remind me and say, look, if we get into that kind of trouble while we're on vacation, I'm sure we will be able to buy what we need. And that will be a better solution than packing it all and taking it along. Right.
I like your husband.
I know, I do too.
So
Right.
what are some other tips that you would say to people in terms of making progress with all of this? Because
Mhm.
I think for myself, time is one
Right.
of the things, like my time management. I'm trying to crunch
Yes.
things in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, if we think about those 5 or 10 pound weights at the gym, start small. I would say set a timer, right? So, and make it sort of a regular daily thing so that you become better at it. If you leave it to be this sort of big thing that has to happen, like if, I'm thinking about, your husband with the flooded basement, it's this big looming task, and then we're just going to continue to put it off and put it off. But if you can say, let's just today go and get one box. Let's get one box from the basement and we'll do the work that has to happen with one box. And then when that box is done, we'll feel good about it. And then if we feel like, oh, we actually do have some more time, maybe that didn't take as long as I thought, go back and get a second box, right? So, and that way you can chip away at it and work up that muscle, and it will get easier over time. So then once you've done a space or an area, like you can keep progressing in the categories, right? So we often say start with the most impersonal category first, whatever that is for you. So for some people, that might be books. That was not my reality. Books was something I had to work up to. I started with clothing, and even that had its challenges. There were some emotions attached to different clothes. but you can do it and you can warm up. You can, maybe you want to start with something like dishes or kitchen utensils. When it comes to things in kitchens or wherever, you can subdivide the categories as well, right? So maybe when it comes to the kitchen, you want to say, okay, I'm going to look just at silverware or flatware, whatever it is. Or I'm going to start with just food containers, right? Like Tupperware, right? Or whatever gets accumulated in that drawer that can hardly close or open because it's so full, or the cupboard that, things are spilling out of. So you can subdivide as many times as you need to make it manageable and make it doable and achievable in a shorter amount of time. And what tends to happen then is it's almost like you build this momentum, right? And you see, oh, that felt really good. Just decluttering the mugs. Look at that space now that's just in that one shelf. That feels good. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to try this next one, right? So, and then we get to this point of maintenance where you want to adopt these habits and phrases that support your new way of being, right? So, some of my favorites are don't put it down, put it away, right? That's just sort of a mantra or a phrase that you can use to keep some order in the house because you've worked really hard to get here and you don't want to have it go backwards, right? So instead of just setting that thing down, you want to put it away. Another one I sometimes use is don't put something larger on top of something smaller, right? So don't put a big sheet of paper on top of your keys, right? Because then you'll be looking for your keys. And so this really helps us to sort of keep some order. Another one is one thing out for everything that comes in. So let's say you've done some work and decluttered, I don't know, sweaters. Okay. And now you see a new sweater that you like. Maybe it's at the thrift store. Maybe it's on Amazon, maybe whatever it is. You see this and you want it. So you think about the sweaters that you have. Which one are you going to let go of in order to make room for the new one? What ends up happening in many cases is we realize, but I actually like the sweaters that I have. I know that they fit me. I know that they're comfortable. I know the colors look good on me, whatever it is. And so this new thing that was shiny and attractive is losing its luster a little bit because it's not stacking up to the ones that I already have. And I don't know which one I would get rid of, okay, to make room for the new. So there we go. We sort of keep like a level inventory going, right? It stays at the same level. Same with books. If you've done the work of decluttering books, then you can have a bookshelf where they are. And then you know that if you're bringing in a new book or two new books, you have to be aware of which ones are going out because you've set up this container now for yourself, which is the bookshelf, right? So that you keep that inventory at the same level. So we don't want to increase the inventory because then we're going to be back in the same position where we have to declutter the books, right? So this can also just be part of your daily recovery routine. So we do things for our recovery, things like journaling, meditation, phoning a friend, making connections, all maybe it's exercise or planning your meals. You could just add a 5 or 10 minute sweep at the end of the day. And I don't mean sweep with a broom. I mean just sweep through your home and just put away the things that are out of place. Right? So just that 5 minutes, and that helps you to have then maybe that kitchen in the morning that greets you and says, "Oh, I'm so glad you did that last night."
That's fabulous. Well, as you continue giving us specific tips, what are some things that busy parents can do to help their children acquire this sort of skill set and mindset that we have if we're food addicts or have difficulties with
Yeah.
our food relationships? Our children may have those also. So
Right.
what is it that we can do in terms of the things in the kitchen being closed or open at certain times of the day or night, and
Mhm.
picking up after themselves and
Right.
doing that in this kind of regular way? What
Yeah.
what can you
Yeah.
suggest?
So once you get to like sort of that maintenance phase or whatever that I talked about with the amount of stuff, having that 5 to 10 minute sweep at the end of the day, let's do it before the kids go to bed. Okay, let's involve them in it. Maybe it's a game. Maybe you set a timer and see how many things can you put back into their homes, right? Go and see what they come back with and just celebrate that they could do that, right? And then they learn this is something doable. It's achievable. It's fun. It feels good. And it didn't take very long, right? It didn't prevent me from then, having a story at bedtime because I was so busy trying to clean things up, right? So I would say, don't ever use it as a punishment. Just make it as fun and as you can gamify things with kids, and they tend to love that, right? When we're getting to the place of maintenance and we maybe think, okay, the kids have a lot of stuff right now. Maybe it is toys, maybe it's games, maybe it's clothing, maybe it's memorabilia, things like that. So you can also teach them the skills to be able to make those decisions, right? So what we used to do with our kids is we'd slide 3 laundry baskets into their room, and this one for what you want to keep, one for what you want to give away, and one that you're unsure, right? Because we want to give them some space and time to be able to make the decisions, right? So then they would start to sort things and they could sort it. Okay, these things I definitely want to keep. These things I think I'm ready to give to someone else. These things I don't know yet. I need some time to think about it, right? So, and don't be upset if the unsure pile or the maybe pile is big, right? Because just like they are learning this process. They are learning how to exercise this muscle. So you can work through that maybe pile with them. Maybe it's at another time. You don't want to overwhelm them. So I would say, you don't want to make this a whole Saturday event, right? Just take, I would say, less than an hour with them. And if that maybe pile is big and you need to return to it, that's okay. You can work through it together. And I would say you can also learn a lot about your child in the process and seeing what are they attached to, right? What are they easily letting go of? And you want to be open to their decisions, right? You want to empower them, right? So if they want to give away something that you think they should keep, this is a big sticking point, I think, for parents. So you can get curious as to why you think they should keep it, right? Are you placing some expectations on them and setting them up for maybe feeling guilty if they give things away? That's not exactly what we want to do. You could make a bit of a safety net for them and for you. If there's something that you really think that they'll regret giving away later on in life, you could tuck it away for them, right? Because they're not maybe as aware as you are of what might be coming in life and that they might actually want these things. But I would say use that really sparingly, right? How will they feel if someday they come across this big pile of things that they thought were given away to somebody else, right? And this whole time you've kept them. So I would say if there's something you think is super special and you know them well enough to know they're going to regret this later, sure, maybe tuck those things away, but use that very sparingly. If they seem to want to keep everything, maybe you want to expose them to some stories of people who don't have much, right? Or maybe you could visit some people who don't have much, or some places where there is some poverty, right? To help them to understand how giving things away can really help people when they get it. So helping them make that sort of connection, that they see where something is going and they see how it could help someone, that might help them to get more comfortable with letting things go. And I would say whatever is happening there, whether they're giving a lot away or they're hanging on to things, just try and nurture what you're seeing. As parents, that's part of your job, is to nurture the things that you see, the gifts that you see in your kids, right? So if you see generosity, you want to just admire that and help them sort of see, oh, that's part of who you are. That's amazing, right? Or if they have attachment to memories and connections with people, you want to celebrate that and say, oh yeah, like I can see how that thing really attaches you to Nana, right? And how you want to remember her in that way. Or there's anything in between, right? You want to help them to feel seen and known and valued in this whole exercise.
Those connections and changing from the isolation that we talked about at the very beginning, where people are isolating because of having too much stuff.
Right.
And then getting to that point where we see the connections. And one of the things that has helped me is to take photographs of the
Mhm.
things that I cherish, and that I have those photographs to look at, to remember, but I don't have to have the material possession. So
That's right. That's right. And with our kids too,
visual.
right? If they're making a school project that is like a paper mache volcano, that,
Right.
that is large, you might not have the space to be able to keep that for very long. But taking some pictures of it and taking pictures of them with it and how proud they are of making it can help you both to remember that thing, so that giving it away, or maybe just passing it on, or saying we no longer need this,
Right.
that can help you to let it go, because you won't forget the memory when you have the picture of it. Yeah.
And having those conversations. I had worked on refinishing a dining room table and
Hmm.
chairs that my
Hmm.
grandparents had. And when giving it away, my parents gave it away without me being involved in that decision. And it was their right to do it. It was their furniture,
Yeah.
and they were ready to move on without it. But I needed to have that conversation. And the
Hmm.
conversation was important to me, even though they had already made the decision.
Right.
You know, I don't know that I would have wanted to pay for the storage, some realistic reality, but
Hmm.
that conversation is important. So
Hmm.
that they continue to feel involved and heard.
That's right. Yeah,
So
because we all process memories differently, right? And that can be something that can really be valuable in letting go of things, to see how you can preserve the memories.
exactly,
Yeah. So
exactly.
I think really in general, Cynthia, like cluttering, it can really get out of hand quickly and lead to a lot of frustration and a sense of overwhelm, and that does not help us in our recovery, right? So it can really deter you from having your home space be a place of rest and relaxation and safety, right? So, and in order to like promote mental health, we need safety and we need a place of rest, right? So this is supporting your recovery and supporting our mental health. That's decluttering can be like a really valuable tool in that journey of recovery.
So if people want support in doing this, because it is not the easiest thing, as you
Mhm.
mentioned, how might they get in touch with you to talk with you and find you?
Yeah. So, yeah, for sure. If you're feeling like you need help with decluttering, or you're just getting emotionally stuck in the process, right, we can be there to help. So, Simplicated and Seniors Move, they're sort of the names of our companies. Simplicated is SYMPLICATTED. So you can find us, like find our website and see what we have to offer. We have blog posts, we have videos that can sort of help if you're more of a self starter, if you need a kickstart, or you find that you're emotionally stuck and you want some help through the process. We have lots of experience in helping people do this, and we have our own method to help keep you going, and tools and tips along the way that can really get you started in this.
Even if you're not close by, you can do this online.
That's right. Yeah. We've done both. So we can use, through the magic of things like Zoom and FaceTime and whatever, we can do this online as well, because we don't have to physically even see the stuff. We're working on you and where you're getting emotionally stuck, to be able to help you to let go of things.
And to keep the things that are important to you at the same time. So
That's right. That's
all of
right.
that. Oh, this has just been such a pleasure. Bethany, this is such an arena of surrendering on the one hand, letting go, and yet the freedom that you've talked about and how freeing it is to have space in our minds, to have space in our physical presence, and to have space that allows us to have those interrelationships and conversations.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you for having done this, and I hope we have lots of viewers that pay attention to this because they can have more recovery space as well. So,
That's right. And I think anything that can propel us along that journey of recovery is worth paying attention to. So I really thank you for helping make that connection between decluttering and recovery and inviting me to talk about that.
well, I'm thrilled that you did it for us today, and thank you so much. And if you would like to generously involve our audience in donating to Food Addiction Institute, we just go to foodaddictioninstitute.org, and we have a place for donations there to support the work of this organization. So thank you, Bethany. Thank you so much for your generous care for us today. Thank you.
You're welcome.